You guys doing? It's Jake Wrestler. I'm here to talk about mental illness today because it's Mental Health Day. And the biggest negative thing I've went through in my life is mental illness. And I want to talk about some of the things that have worked for me, some of the things I might do, might not, and some of the things I went through. So I was going to talk about a symptom of not knowing you exist, or feeling like you don't exist, or thinking you know you don't exist. That's one of the hardest, because it's like you can't enjoy anything because it doesn't feel real, and you don't think it's real. And in your mind, you know it's not real, and you know you don't exist, and you know you're already just in the ground. And it's a hard symptom, and I'm starting there because I want to show some of the intensity. I used to feel like I was the worst guy, worst person, bad, fucked up, and then I started feeling like I didn't exist, and I was the worst person at the same time. So you take a dimension, you don't exist, and a dimension, you're the worst. And that's mental illness. I obsess over everything. I go up, sometimes. Right now I'm feeling okay, and I crash down. I had psychosis. I thought I was God the Father. When I thought God didn't exist. I thought God did exist. I thought both, and I thought I was the devil. Right now I don't believe in the devil. That's been helping me a lot. But I thought I didn't exist, like I said. But I'm reading my notes. The real hard thing was you didn't know anything for a fact. So I was able to figure these things out, but I wasn't able to know if I was right. Even if I had logical evidence, I'd have to keep checking. I have diagnosis for OCD. I've had OCD since I can remember. I don't remember a day without OCD. And I also have diagnosed with bipolar, which I think developed from the OCD, and this is my theory on it. The anxiety, right? Let's say you're anxious about this pencil, the not being a sharpener for this pencil. You're anxious about it, right? I don't know if there's a sharpener. Eventually you start thinking, the more you obsess, the anxiety increases, right? I don't need to get into that explanation. You probably know that. And as the anxiety increases, you start thinking less and less that there's a sharpener. And eventually, you hit the point where you don't think there's a sharpener. You're not worried about it. You're depressed about it. There's no sharpener. There's no sharpener. It's not like, oh, is there a sharpener? None. So the anxiety becomes depression. And then you keep obsessing because the anxiety is still there over how there's no sharpener, and you're basically in hell. Now, anybody who would be in hell for thinking there's no fucking pencil sharpeners is out of the mind. But I'd probably think that, But that's just an example. It goes around things like thinking I'm extremely close with my parents, and I'm close with my siblings too, and worried about them dying every day, to a point where it feels like they're actually not here, or I can't enjoy them being here because I'm worried that they're going to die and never see them again. No afterlife, or there is an afterlife and we're all going to hell and we're separated. Or reincarnation, we're right back to this. So, it's a very negative, it's very anxious and paranoid. That's where my thoughts come from, but the result is depression. So the root is anxiety and the result is depression. So the depression is the finish line and the starting point is the anxiety. And there's this feeling of infinite, of being like infinitely in hell. And like just never being able to get out of it. And it's like, in a way, you just know you're never getting out of it. Somehow you just know it. And let me read some more. I'm just telling you what my experience feels like. I've heard some people hear voices, and every once in a while I've had something like I say, somebody called me and this wasn't there. You think it's like a spirit or something, if spirits exist, which they might, but I never really had that experience which I'm very thankful for. But I did have the experience of thinking I was like Jesus Christ, and I was telepathically communicating with people, and people were talking shit about me, and I was reading their mind, and my parents were the devil, and they were going to hell, and I was going to heaven, but we were all just going in the ground. I had that, and there was some times where I was violent, and I'm not going to get into that. I got into drugs. I don't personally think marijuana is necessarily bad or necessarily good. Sometimes it helped me, sometimes it made my symptoms worse. Personally, I don't smoke now. I just want to take a break. Maybe off it for good, but I'm off it now. Drinking was never really my thing, but I did it. Did some other drugs. I took a little too much of my medication sometimes, but I'm on Latuda. I was on Paxil. Paxil was great. But Paxil kind of had some side effects. I'm on Luvox now. Luvox is one of the things that saved my life. So is Latuda and lithium. And I have a diagnosis for bipolar and OCD and I think ADHD. I definitely have it. And it's not always about the diagnosis. But, I always felt bad in two ways. In a way of like being sad and depressed and anxious, and just the way of being a bad person. And I'm not a bad person, but I always thought in the back of my mind, I'm a fucking bad person. I'm the worst. I'm the worst. And then my illness at points in my life made me want to be the worst, but then when I was worrying about my parents dying, it just ripped that out of me and made me feel terrible. But yeah, I just want to say I understand what it feels like to live in pain and not know you exist and feel like you're in hell and think you're somebody you're not and not be able to get out of it. I know what it's like. And some of the things that work for me are, a lot of people say distractions, but you have to be careful, because if you distract yourself with something that's boring or something you don't like, you may become more depressed. So if your therapist is telling you, or somebody's telling you, distract yourself, you need to be specific. Distract yourself with something that has a reward at the end. And if you're so depressed you can't imagine feeling good, just distract yourself with something that you think is positive, even if it doesn't make you feel good at the moment. And distract yourself with people that you like. Reach out for help. The other thing is really good is the technique where you actually change your thoughts and your behaviors and emotions. So you actually think in your head, like how you could sarcastically say, I'm Derek Jeter, or I'm Lindsay Lohan, right? I didn't mean that. You think in your head sarcastically the thought, I'm happy, or you don't even go there, I feel better, or I feel okay, and then you act like it, and then you just keep doing that and practicing it, and subconsciously it helps with the distractions. I just want to say for Mental Health Day, mental illness is gonna die. It's gonna be cured, and I'm beating the shit out of it until I can't beat the shit out of it anymore because it's dead and doesn't exist. And I'm making it not exist, not only not be zero and non-existent, infinite negative. I'm taking it and I'm driving it home. My motivation is really extreme, third level extreme. That's always what I thought. I'm being strong. My strength is through the roof. I'm going to do this. And you are going to take your mental illness and make it so it's never going to exist, never existed, and doesn't exist. You need anything? Let me know. Anyone.